Blessings, good evening to you all. It's a Tuesday night, so we have a few questions to answer. Luang Por, when I practice breathing meditation, I feel uncomfortable, as though there's increased pressure on me. Do you have any advice? Very common. Many people talk about the practice of anapanasati in the beginning. They're getting familiar with their body, their posture, how their body is, the feelings, the sensations, and of course the breath itself. And a lot of it is new territory, because we spent so much time in the past letting our mind wander and think about the world and life and work and family and friends and everything but the body and the breath. So we have to be quite patient in the beginning and put up with some of these new experiences, even if they do seem uncomfortable at first. Uncomfortable aches and pains in muscles, and even the breath itself, when you put attention on it, it seems like you're trying to hold on to it or control it often, so it starts to feel uncomfortable. So part of our practice of mindfulness of breathing is learning how to apply effort in a skillful way without letting craving and desire for control and results overwhelm the mind or take over our practice. And finding that middle way between the effort to bring up mindfulness of breathing, knowing the breath going in and breath going out, but relaxing so that we're not letting craving lead our effort. And craving manifests in different ways. It's just this sense of trying to control or wanting the breath to be a certain way, or wanting the mind to be with the breathing. So of course, when it's not with the breath, because of distraction, then that already sets up tension, some discomfort, displeasure or disappointment. Also, one of the reasons people begin meditating is because they maybe have noticed a build-up of stress in their mind, accumulated stress from relationships, work, sometimes health issues as well. And so meditation, we come to it hoping to relax and let go and find some peace, but we also bring with us the normal attitudes that we have in our daily life, where we're quite busy, and part of our stress is just that feeling that we have a lot to do, a lot of things that we need to do to run our lives. We have to work, we have to maybe look after other people as well, earn money, pay bills, do this, do that. And so we're bringing that attitude, our normal attitudes, we bring them straight into our meditation. And often we have this sense, it's another thing I have to do and I have to achieve. If I'm going to invest time and effort into this meditation, then I want to see some results. So already we're setting our mind up for this feeling of pressure, tension, sense of self, we call it. And of course, ultimately our meditation is helping us to see through the sense of self, to see it as a construct of the mind that's not actually real. It's a delusion. But at first, we're dealing with it, and it latches onto our meditation. So we find even breath meditation can become burdensome, or we react to it, or we feel annoyed by our lack of mindfulness, and the sense of self manifests in different ways. So I have to be very patient and keep putting the effort in, but also noticing how we create that extra suffering or stress even around something as neutral and ordinary as meditation. So we have this idea of developing relaxed effort, energetic but in a gentle, relaxed way at the same time. Neither too hard, pushing too hard, nor too soft or giving up. Learning just to be with the way things are. So even if we have a lot of self-view coming up as we meditate, or feelings, unpleasant feelings in the body that we're noticing, or tension in the mind, accept that, but then try not to increase it or add to it. Just know it and let it go, and try to develop this relaxed awareness of the breath. And you'll find over time, as you become more continuously aware of the breath, you will physically and mentally relax. And many good things will come from it. But you have to give it time, and you also have to look at the quality of your effort that you're making, and try not to put pressure on yourself because you're falling into the desire for results, or the feeling that you have to do something, there's somebody who's doing something. And you bring this sense of self in, which means you can't relax, and you're creating stress out of something very ordinary like the breath. So don't give up, but try to observe yourself as you're doing it, observe the quality of your effort, and give yourself some good instructions, relax, and give it time. And hopefully things will improve. Next question. Dear Lumpur, as the sila or precepts are concerning only the body, action and speech, can you please give how one trains the citta in right effort, right mindfulness and right concentration in the life of a layperson? Well, one thing I liked about Ajahn Chah's teachings when I first came across them was the way he encouraged us to see that sila, samadhi, panya, these different aspects of the path support each other, merge into each other, and sometimes he even said they're synonymous for each other. So sila is not separate from wisdom, which is not separate from samadhi, which is not separate from sila. You're training everything together, but it's just, you might say, a practical reality. When you begin practice, your actions, physical actions and your speech tend to be more obvious to you than your thoughts and the movements and activities of the mind inside, internally. Especially when mindfulness is inconsistent. Sometimes you're mindful, sometimes you're not. You'll tend to notice your actions and speech more easily, more readily, and particularly the consequences of them. Whereas mental states arising, passing away, they're harder to keep track of. Not impossible, but a little more challenging. So you notice actions and speech. That's the first area that you can train yourself. But of course, to train your actions and speech to come under the guidelines of the precepts and to be, we say, wholesome, skillful, you also have to be aware of your mind, because the mind is the one that orders your body to act and your mouth to speak. It's just half the time we're missing that order, or the intentional action, intentional speech. We're missing it because it's fast and it's habitual and it's very reactive. We say we act first and think later, or we speak first and think later. But you're training body, speech and mind together. That's the first thing to understand. And training body and speech can help you see your mind better as well. And focusing on the mind helps you to guide your body and speech to be skillful as well. So they're working together, they're supporting each other. Another thing Ajahn Chah said is that when you practice meditation, you're putting effort and maybe into a regular meditation practice, you can't help but notice the rest of your daily activities and how you're spending your time and your attitudes and the way you're relating to the material world and to other people outside of your meditation, because it all flows back into the mind. What you say, what you do, how you relate to the world flows back into your mind. And you'll have memories and thoughts and ideas coming up in your meditation which are often stimulated from whatever else is going on in your life. You'll remember things that you've said and done. And so one of the effects of regular meditation practice, mindfulness, developing it in a formal way in meditation, is that you become more aware of your speech and actions because you see the relationship. So, for example, you'll notice if you say something that's very hurtful or unkind, it leaves a strong impression on your mind, and when you meditate, you almost certainly come up and you maybe feel the pain of that. Or if you tell a very deliberate lie, when you're meditating and your mindfulness is improving, you might feel a sense of this quality of hiriotapa, sense of shame and awareness of the consequences of your action. In that case, if you told a lie, you feel uncomfortable, your conscience we say it pricks you, like a needle pricks you. It makes you feel uncomfortable when you remember what you said. So sila and the practice of samadhi, they go hand in hand, because as you develop samadhi, you see what the obstacles are to developing states of calm, concentration. Your mindfulness improves, well, your sila will improve, and you'll probably make a few changes in your life so that you become, you start to keep the precepts in a more disciplined way, in a more complete way, because you can see how they support your development of meditation. And that's seeing the role of sila, the role of being mindful of your speech or actions. That's wisdom. It's part of the wisdom that sees the path, and the role of sila in the path, the role of sila in supporting samadhi. And as sila improves, samadhi improves, well, your wisdom also improves. And so, as I said, they all support each other, these three aspects of the training. So sometimes people misunderstand this and they think, precepts is something you learn almost like as a child's thing. You learn the 5 precepts, you can recite them, you know them. And later on somebody learns meditation, they learn mindfulness of breathing, or they learn techniques of vipassana. And they look back on sila as almost like child stuff that they've learned, and they can now move on to the really mature, high and refined, superior Dhamma of the practice of vipassana. And maybe that's can be true on one level, but it can also be a cause for complacency or a blind spot. And many meditators almost neglect their sila because they think they know sila, they know the precepts, they can remember them. They've moved on to the more refined practice of samadhi and then developing insight through vipassana. And often they make mistakes. So, they come out of their meditation practice a little bit more aware, peaceful, perhaps contemplating impermanence. But at the same time, they may break a precept quite easily because they're just not giving the importance to the precepts that they should. And there's a break, you could say, there's a lack of wisdom, a lack of depth of wisdom. Sometimes we develop very deep states of calm and concentration based on supportive conditions, like when you're on retreat, or you're in a very quiet place, or you're on your own at home, or in a monastery or a retreat center, and that's good. But then, as soon as you come out of that more, you might say, unusual environment or specific sort of situation, then you come back to a more normal environment of family, work, interaction with the world, and then very quickly we get irritated, or we can even take it out on people when we've come out of our samadhi and now we're facing more worldly, what we call mental states or defilements, greed, anger, delusion coming up, and it can annoy us and disappoint us, make us feel depressed, sad, or angry. And probably everyone has experienced that. Every meditator will have experienced a time when they were really mindful and blissful in their samadhi, and they come out of it and get really annoyed because there's a loud noise near them, or something that upsets them happens, and they're caught into their reaction at that time. Maybe just a loud noise distracts them, and they don't like the distraction because previously they were in a state of calm. And they may break their precept, get angry and swear or tell someone off or whatever. You've probably all experienced that or seen someone else do it. So this practice is of sila, samadhi, panya. It's a rounded thing. And as you say, in lay life, there'll be challenges. You can't necessarily expect to enter deep states of samadhi if you're going to work. It's the wrong time for that. But you can maintain mindfulness at work for sure. Maintain your precepts, and that's one way you train mindfulness in daily life, is putting effort into keeping the precepts and developing the wisdom and understanding to keep the precepts around other people maybe who don't keep the precepts. And that's a constant challenge for Buddhist practitioners who do meditate. They're sincere in trying to keep the precepts, and then they mix with people who don't keep the precepts. That's very difficult. Someone else is careless with their speech, someone else drinks, somebody else is happy to kill animals, but you're not, and you're working or living with those people, and it can bring up your own feelings of conceit or anger. When you're keeping precepts, someone else is not, you might get angry with them or look down on them, criticize them. That's part of the practice too. So there are these situations where one who is practicing Dhamma, sila, samadhi, panya, they have to be aware of some of these more unusual mental defilements that may come up, like somebody keeps the precepts and then they look down or criticize others who don't, or somebody who's used to going into states of calm in their meditation, then having to deal with more worldly situations where there are loud noises or people, again, not keeping the precepts, well, they may lose their state of samadhi. So what links all this together is also, you might say, is wisdom. Understanding why it's worth putting effort into the precepts and using them to train. Understanding how training in precepts supports the training in samadhi, and then how the effort you put into developing samadhi, overcoming the hindrances, will deepen your insight and you take your understanding of the more profound levels of the Dhamma deeper. So your wisdom will deeper. So each aspect of the practice supports the other, and they're all to be developed. But you also have to use wisdom how to develop in daily life. Sometimes your practice may just be keeping precepts in a challenging situation, just being mindful of what you're doing and keeping out of trouble. Other times maybe you're able to meditate a bit, develop more refined mindfulness. And other times you may just reflect quietly on the Dhamma, at work or traveling or in these ordinary situations. And the reflection on impermanence is a really useful one. Just contemplating the changing nature of your life, the world around you, people, work, material things, the weather, whatever. The reflection on impermanence really brings the mind to the Dhamma in every part of our life, whether you're working, socializing, sleeping, bathing, eating, whatever. You can reflect on impermanence of body and mind all the time. So that's another good practice for daily life, keeping you close to the Dhamma, just seeing the impermanence of the activities and your state of mind through the day. I know one lay person, they go to work and they reflect on the impermanence of their work, the workforce, their work colleagues. They reflect, maybe one day somebody won't come into work because they'll have died. You may even have had that experience. Somebody you know at work passed away and they just didn't return to work because they died at home. You could reflect on that. One day we all will not be here. I will not be here, you will not be here. It's a valid and useful reflection to bring up, just to remind yourself of the impermanence of life, so that you don't get too lost in your moods and your stress at work or in your daily life. So in the long run, there's plenty to introduce into your Dhamma practice in daily life, as we say. Keep working at it. Another question. Good day, Lumpur. It was an interesting experience upon trying out the death rehearsal before sleeping. Assuming I am going through the death tunnel, there are 5 phases. 1, gratitude and appreciation to the kind people, including teachers. 2, forgiving those who have not been so kind. 3, rejoicing in my past skillful actions by body, speech or mind. 4, forgiving myself for the past unskillful actions by body, speech or mind, as they were committed due to causes and conditions, ignorance and having little Dhamma in that time. 5, let go of everything and not look back. This last stage there is still something trivial to look back, i.e. unfinished matters. Then I awaken to it, and from that I know what to work on before the real day comes. If I cannot resolve the unfinished matters to my level best going forward due to causes and conditions, I think it's easier to let go then. Not sure if this is the right thing I've done, but through this process I know my inner self better. So it's as much a statement as a question. Just commenting on what you've written, it looks quite good as a reflection to do sometimes, or a practice like you say. Death rehearsal. Ajahn Chah talked about this, dying before you die. And going to sleep is a bit like dying before you die, isn't it? You don't know if you'll wake up again. Be careful, some people get so worried they can't fall asleep. If you're a worrier, anxious, you start comparing sleep with death, then you can't fall asleep because you think, oh, well, I'm not going to wake up, and you get fear, and then the adrenaline or whatever comes, and then you can't fall asleep. So you want to relax, but it is a good reflection on how would you die if you knew it was your last life. And you seem to have got the main practices there, the gratitude, the forgiveness, remembering past good actions, forgiving and acknowledging and forgiving and letting go of the unskillful actions. And then I would say number one priority is just maintaining mindfulness, like you say, and letting go of everything. So if you have a meditation object you use regularly, such as the breath, once you've remembered your past good actions and forgiven yourself and done all that, well, just go to the breath or any other meditation object and stick with that as best you can until you fall asleep. If you're not sleepy, well, just keep going with it for a while. Then occasionally people enter states of samadhi just before they go to sleep, because they are letting go of everything and they're teaching themselves to let go, so they enter samadhi, and then, true, you might not go to sleep for a while, your mind brightens. Ajahn Chah sometimes said to the monks, like, do that, brighten your mind before you go to bed, go to sleep. And then when you do go to sleep, you won't sleep that long. You won't toss and turn and have an unpeaceful night with lots of nightmares or crazy dreams or whatever. You'll tend to sleep peacefully, and then you'll awake with a sense of mindfulness. So the one to aim for is breathe in, breathe out, and then you fall asleep on the in-breath or the out-breath, and then on the waking up, back onto the in-breath or out-breath. That's the kind of classic practice. That's obviously quite hard because we think so much, and if we haven't practiced much, it may be challenging, but the basic idea is to maintain mindfulness on your object before you go to sleep. Just as if you were conscious and dying, just to go to your meditation object, let the mind gather together and let go of the body. And there is a certain similarity between sleep and death in that sense. You're letting go of the body, just going to the mind, and keeping awareness and mindfulness on the mind itself, and not letting the mind break up into proliferation, worries. Yes, you'll notice one thing that keeps people awake at night is worry, isn't it? Worry about work that's coming up, things that are going to happen, worry about past actions and the consequences of past actions. That really keeps people awake. So if you have a meditation object you're developing, we'll go to that, and that will calm you down so that you will relax enough maybe to sleep, and you'll sleep well, you'll sleep better. So your description sounds quite good. Maybe keep it up, sounds like a good practice. Last question. What is pure love? It's a question for Valentine's Day, isn't it? What is pure love? Well, love without mental defilement, greed, anger, delusion, without craving and attachment, without ignorance. So really, pure love can only be displayed by Buddhas and Arahants. Pure love, you might call it metta, apamanya, boundless or universal loving kindness, karuna, compassion, without limits, without boundaries. So for all beings in all realms, in all directions. And then the one who can experience that really is the one who is free from greed, anger and delusion, free from all attachment to self. Then quite naturally, everything they do is without self, unselfish. Whatever they say, do, already that quite naturally will be an expression of pure love. It's interesting, we say a baby who's born, they experience their first taste of arahants or pure love is their parents. It's as close a description you could get to pure love in the worldly sense. Just a sense of love, care, attention, compassion, kindness for a newborn baby who's totally helpless. That sense of just giving, protecting, supporting without seeking anything in return, without judging, without making any fuss, just giving love because that's what's required. So that's as close as you get to the Arahant's love, just in an ordinary situation. But then if you're fortunate enough to meet somebody who has practiced this Buddhist path to completion, well then you may also experience the love of an Arahant. The mind of an Arahant exudes kindness and compassion. But because they're an Arahant, they're fully understanding of the Four Noble Truths and the mind of defilement, and what is defilement, what is not. So some of their love can be what we call tough love. So if you live with a teacher who is beyond the defilements, then some of the things they say can be quite confronting if you're still coming from a place of defilement. You've still got your ignorance, your attachment, your craving. They might point that out, or just do things that stir up your craving because they're coming from a place of non-craving. But you could say that's the purest love, is say somebody who points out your mental defilements to you in one way or another. They help you to see them, they reflect them back to you maybe. Because if somebody has no defilements, then your defilements kind of bounce on them and they tend to bounce back on you. If you have anger but they don't, your anger bounces back on you. If you have greed, selfishness, or you have confusion, delusion, and they don't, your own defilements tend to become apparent to you quicker, more obviously. So if you're with a teacher who is considered to be an Arahant, you often have this feeling like, why is my mind so full of different thoughts, different defilements? Because you're next to somebody who is displaying a lot of compassion, emptiness, non-defiled behavior, then your defiled behavior starts to become more apparent. So you might have the thought, like you hear your own mind saying something and you have the thought, shut up, to yourself, because you realize what you're saying or thinking is maybe coming from defilement. How that manifests for each person may vary, but the general idea is the purest love comes from the Arahant, either a Buddha or a Sauvaka Arahant. And one who is unenlightened will come in contact with that, and it's not always easy because you're seeing your defilements, things that you've cherished and looked after, your defilements, your attachments, that you identify with as yourself. They're exposing that to you, and they're exposing to you that this is the cause of your suffering, that you're attaching to all the things you like to attach to. Your desires, your thoughts, your views, your opinions, your self-interest. And that's difficult to confront. So you might call that the toughest love. Purest love can be tough, but it depends on the situation. Many stories of people who were suffering a lot, seeking solace, and great Arahants like Ajahn Chah or some of the other forest masters, giving them exactly what they wanted, giving them a blast of pure metta from the mind of an Arahant is something very calming and powerful, and can bring tears to your eyes. If an Arahant spreads metta, your mind can open up, all your troubles disappear, temporarily at least. Some people enter samadhi, some people just relax and they lose all their stress in the presence of an enlightened being. receiving metta from that enlightened being. And even animals can benefit from that. So you could say that's the purest kind of love. For an ordinary practitioner, you can aim for that, at least sometimes develop your metta meditation to all beings, including the ones you don't like. The animals, cockroaches and spiders, things you don't like, the people you're annoyed with or hate or have had trouble with. You practice it sometimes. Develop this radiant goodwill in all directions to all beings, even the ones you don't like or have some history with. Try it, because it's very liberating. It's liberating you from various attachments to aversion and hatred, and it can be very revealing to us, insightful, when you realize that anger is coming from delusion and it's suffering, and you learn a very good lesson, and maybe you never want to get angry with people again. Once you've learnt it once, somebody who really hurt you and you've managed to let go of your anger towards them, it's much harder after that to get angry with people or seek revenge again. If you work to give it up once, then the second time round it's easier. So we were discussing this earlier today. Somebody with merit, somebody who's practiced the path and developed good karma, wholesome karma, they've got merit, they've got developed good qualities, they don't get angry easily because they know it's suffering. It's pointless. There's no point getting angry, even when you're provoked or meet with difficulty. You just know it's not the way to go. So we say someone with merit gets angry with difficulty, and an arahant doesn't get angry at all. And Ajahn Chah said it's not that you don't face challenges and difficulties. People still do things that would previously have made you angry. Things happen that would previously make you angry, but you're no longer angry in the normal sense, because you've let go of that reaction and that conditioning process. You've let it go. But it doesn't mean to say you're not exposed to things that would normally make someone angry. That you are. Or Ajahn Mahabhua's sort of favourite phrase is, I'm not angry with people, I'm angry with the defilements, greed, anger, delusion that may arise in somebody's behaviour or in their mind. Because defilements cause suffering. So they're the thing that you have to get rid of. But he wouldn't be angry with a person, he'd just be angry with defilements. And mental defilements are not a person. They come from delusion. They're deluded mental states that cause suffering. But they're not a person. Anyway, we could talk a lot about this, but the purest love comes from Buddhas and Arahants. So I'll leave you with that to contemplate tonight.